Assalamu alaikum everyone. So we were doing data types and related things. Let us start with it. We were at past paper questions. Today we will finish past paper questions related to data types and all. And afterwards we will continue with string manipulation today. All right. So we were at this question. A board game is designed for two players, not and cross. At the beginning, all cells of 3 by 3 grid are empty. The players take turns in placing their markers in an empty cell of the grid. Player not starts. The game ends when one player completes a row, column, or diagonal, or the grid is full. Here is one example of the 3 turns. I told you that basically what you see over this plane are 3 things, either the null values, a not, or cross. All right. Many people think if they see only 2 things, they do not consider the blank area. In that case, they think that there are just 2 possibilities, so it would be Boolean. The first thing that you have to watch is either these things are filled with false or these things are filled with null. Because if it is Boolean, all the values here will be filled with false because the default initialization value for Boolean is basically false. So this must be character. You see 3 shapes. This is null, and these 2 filled shapes are basically a single character. So the overall data type will be character. Now, Ali wants to write a program to play the game. So game end is a variable which is of Boolean data type, true and false. Grid is an array. So data type will be character. This is an array grid. Type will be character. Current player. The marker value is either this or this. As we know that we put characters in single quotations, so this will be a character as well. This would be a variable of type character. Player takes turn. Current player chooses cell program checks if it is valid and stores the marker. Player take turns. So which player is this? This would be a variable, and this would be a character as well. The one. All right, so display grid. Output the content of the grid. So this would be a procedure. You have to choose from variable, procedure, function, or array. This would be a procedure. Okay. Has player 1 checks if the current player has completed a row, column, or diagonal. So this would be a variable as well. and the type would be Boolean. Checks if the grid is full. This would be a function that will check if the grid is full, and then it will return a value. So this would be a function, and what it returns is Boolean. Okay, swap player swaps the value of the current player. Now it says, no, nothing further. Okay, all right. A sports club in a town organizes an annual sports day for competitors aged 8 to 18. The organizer wants these competitors to enter the sports day events online. To enter an event, each competitor needs to supply the following information: competitor name, age in years. So if it is competitor name, we know that it is a string. Name should be around like 20 bytes. Age in years, it is integer. 4 bytes. Whether or not they are a sports club member, this would be Boolean. That is 1 byte. The letter code for the single event they want to enter. So these are letter codes: A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so this would be a character of 1 byte. Okay, so competitor name, data type is a string, field size in bytes is 20, competitor age, that would be integer, 4, club member, that would be Boolean, 1, and event entered would be letter code, that is a character thing. 1, entry fee would be currency, and that is 8. So you get 10 marks for it. Player takes turn. Player takes turn. Player takes turn is basically current player chooses cell, program checks if it is valid, and stores the marker. Okay. So I thought that this is a variable, but it might be a procedure as well, or a function that checks whether current player chooses a cell and program checks if it is valid and stores marker. So this won't be a variable, rather it will be a function. Current player chooses a cell, program checks if it is valid. Yes, this would be a function that checks whether the player has chosen a proper cell or not, and the answer would be Boolean. That is correct. Player takes turn, current player chooses a cell, and then program checks if it is valid to store the marker. Okay. Now, Sheena has inherited a recipe book from her grandmother All the recipes give ingredient measurements in ounces. Sheena wants to write a program to produce a conversion table that helps her use the correct weight in grams. To convert ounces into grams, 1 ounce is 28.35 grams. The conversion table will show the number of grams to the nearest whole number. So both the grams and ounces are basically integers. Okay, so both data types are what? Integers. Now, Sheena wants to set up a business selling homemade cakes. She wants customers to order online. She needs to know customer's name, customer's contact telephone number, the date the cake is to be ready, the type of cake, all right, whether it is a fruit cake, a Victoria sponge, ghetto, or cheesecake, whether the cake is to be delivered or not. Now, Sheena wants to store the data for each order as a record consisting of the following fields. Complete the following complete the following table of fields for cake order. Give one value for each field size. So customer name, that is a string, 20, telephone number. Remember all those numbers which are not meant for any mathematical dealings or calculations. Rather, they are just there uh, for the purpose of identification. All right. When they are there for the purpose of identification, they are saved as a string. For example, telephone number, cell phone number, barcode number, or any number which is there and it is not for mathematical calculation purposes but for identification purposes. So telephone number is a string, let's say 15. Date ready is date, date is 8. Cake type is a character. 1. Price is currency. 8. To be delivered is boolean. That is 1. You get 8 marks for it. Okay. October, November 2013, P22 question 2. James plans to store the titles and authors of his favorite ebooks in an array. He has 56 ebooks at the moment and expects to reach 150. A two-dimensional array, my ebooks, is to be used. Part D says that James' friend Jatinder uses his idea but decides to store more information about each of her ebooks. Complete the following table. Use a single numerical value for field size. Ebook ID. A unique ID, a whole number between 1 and 500. So this is a series from 1 to 500. So it goes as integer. An integer is 4 bytes. Book title. I think 20 bytes would be good. The author of the book would be string as well. Let's say 20. Date bought was basically date, 8 bytes. Cost is currency, 8 bytes. Fiction or non-fiction, that is Boolean, 1. 8 marks question. Meena wants to develop a program to keep a record of her examination results. This is from May June 13 P23. She will want to enter, sort, and print out the data which is stored as a file of records. Each record contains at least the following data: subject, examination title, level, date set, and mark. An example of an examination title is General Certificate of Education. So this is the data which is meant to be entered. Okay. The date set field will contain only the month and year that the examination was taken on. Only the month and year. For all subjects, the mark is between 0 and 100 inclusive. The level is 0 or 1. Okay, so date set basically contains month and year. It is not the date as we think of date like 21 to 21. So subject identifier, that is string, let's say 20 bytes. Examination title, let's say we make it title. The identifier, that would be string, and let's say 30 because the title was a lengthy one. And then we have level. Level is either O or A, so this would be a character. Date set will be string for the reason that they are not basically saving the date itself, only the month and year. Month and year means like 2 digits for month and 2 digits for year, so 4 would be enough. Mark. Mark will be integer. They were between 1 and 100, I believe. Yes, 0 and 100. So that is 4 minutes. Each record needs another field to uniquely identify that record. State an appropriate identifier for this field and state a suitable data type for it. For her examination results. So it is a record for her examination results. So examination subject, examination title, and level. Okay. So it says that each record needs another field to uniquely identify that record. Okay, G. So that will be ID, but which ID that would be? Examination ID, but this table is for one single subject. Okay, so subject ID, no, subject ID would be from another table. So this will be subject and examination, both. They are coming from their respective. So record ID, let's just make it record ID. And it will be integer, would have 4. See, the thing is, the subject is coming from another source, means all this examination have the same subject. So we cannot put subject ID as the ID for this particular record. Examination titles are common among all exams happen. So record ID is the suitable name that will be identifying this record in all of the records. So record ID is most suitable name. Okay, so we cannot make it subject ID, we cannot make it sub examination ID because examination is common for all exams and subjects are common for all exams as well. So we cannot make the name of the ID for either of subject or examination. So this is a good idea that we just make record ID as the ID for this particular one record which is being entered. Now, Meena wants to develop a program to keep a record of her coursework assignment. She will want to enter, sort, and print out data. She decided to modularize the solution. Each record needs another field to be uniquely identified. State an appropriate identifier. Coursework assignment. So assignment ID, no space. Remember that would be integer and 4 bytes. State the number of bytes needed to store value in the field is marked. Is marked is basically Boolean. This is as per the name and that would have 1 byte size. Okay, so these questions are pretty much of the same style. So just skip them and solve those questions which are basically different. Okay, let's talk about few things. See, over here there is a field called type of the book they prefer. This would be a printed book, audio book, or ebook. So you see, this might be a string data type which would have a fixed type of entries possible in it. But this might be a list. Since you are in AS, you would not have an idea of the list. List is part of paper 3, which is in A2. Customer name. Beta name, make it habit that if it is name, keep it like more than 15 and up to 20. All right. Type of book they prefer. So it might be string or it might be character because we can take P for printed, audiobook A, and ebook E. So it's up to you what you want. You want to save it as a character or a string, it's up to you. Okay. This will be character. Position will be character as well. Date of birth would be date. Player name would be string. Player ID would be a whole number between 1 and 50, so this would be integer. Integer is 4, date is 8, character is 1, name is string is 20, character is 1. That is how we will choose. Okay. Now this is a good question. Explain how a character is represented in a computer. Every character is represented using a number which is standard, technically called ASCII, and takes 1 byte each. Okay. Explain how character is represented in a computer using a number, which is standard. Technique called ASCII, it takes 1 byte each. Explain how integers are represented in a number. Integers are represented using bits, and from least significant side to the most significant side using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's say these are the bits. So you would be telling that each integer is represented using bits, and from the least, this is the least significant bit side to the most significant bit side, every bit's worth grow by 2 to power n series. So 2 to power 1, 2 to power 0, 2 to power 1, 2 to power 2, 2 to power 3, 2 to power 4, 2 to power 5, as in 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so on and so forth. So integers go like that. Explain how Boolean values are stored in the computer. Boolean values basically require just one bit to be saved. All right, just one bit to be saved. But we cannot save less than a byte. So system completes the byte to store the Boolean. So Boolean is saved as either a single bit 0, which might be for false, or 1, which might be for true. But to save a single bit, the byte is completed and it is saved. All right. So this is Boolean. So it might be 0, it might be 1. The rest all will be zeros. 0 says, let's say, it is false, and 1 says, let's say, it is true. That is how the Boolean thing is saved. Explain the representation of integers in the computer. Explain how characters are stored in the computer. For each of the following data items, state the most suitable data type. So barcode number will be string. I told you that any number that is not meant for any mathematical calculation, means even not even the series, so that will be string, but it would be a larger one. Prices in dollar, that is currency. Currency is 8. Whether or not, whether on order or not, so this would be Boolean. Home telephone number will be string, like 15 characters. Number of subjects studied, that is integer. Whether or not the student is going on a school trip, that is Boolean. Okay. Describe how the ASCII character set is represented. ASCII character in ASCII character set, every single character is represented using a number, which is standardized all over the world. Every number takes up 1 byte space, and there are how many ASCII characters? 128. 128 means they require 7 bits, and the 8th bit is used for parity bit. So every single ASCII character takes up 8 bits. Okay, and there are 128 ASCII characters, mind it. So 2 to power 7. Which is 128 from 0 null to 127 delete. These are 128 ASCII characters. Okay. And ASCII characters combined, they basically show what? They show um, text, mind that. Okay, one last thing that remains. For proper answers, please consult to respective marking schemes. You would see proper wordly answers so that you could use them in your exam. Over here, I'm not basically going to explain you answers. I'm just going to basically explain the related terms and terminologies. For proper exam answers, you basically consult your marking schemes. Okay, one last thing that remains is what if they ask for the size of the file for a particular number of records? What if they ask for the size of the file for a particular number of records? So let's take up this question. This is May, June 2011, P21, P22. Ahmed, a designer, stores the following details of each job that he does in a file. Job ID, a whole number between 1 and 1000 inclusive. So this will be integer. And size is 4. Job description is a string. And let's say job description would be of 20 characters. Price is currency. And that will be 8 bytes. Expected completion date, this is date, and this is 8 bytes. Paid. Paid is either yes or no. That is Boolean. So this is 41 bytes record. Okay. 41 bytes record. What if they ask what will be the size of the file which has 150 records? So 41 bytes per record. Okay, 41 bytes per record. And let's say then we have got 150 bytes of 150 records in the file, 150 total records. So how many bytes are required? That would be 41 multiply 41 multiply 150, 6150. What bytes? 6150 bytes. Now, this is basically the actual size of a file having 150 records, but you see when the file is saved over the computer, the size over the computer disk, the size of the file grows. For different types of files, the size which it takes over the disk is different. So it is a variable factor. We cannot just say that every file will grow by this percentage, but for the sake of simplicity in your syllabus, they have made it 10%. That additional 10% is basically called housekeeping. That additional 10% is basically called housekeeping. So 10% housekeeping is added to the file size. Okay, so initially it was 41 bytes per record. Then There were 150 total records. So let's find the size of 150 records. That was 6150 41 into 150. Then we have to add the housekeeping. Housekeeping will be 615 bytes. Adding these 615 bytes to 6150, it makes it 6765 bytes. This is basically the size of the file over the hard disk. So whenever you are asked to tell the size of the file over the hard disk, don't forget to put this 10% housekeeping in it. So you will be able to find the size of the record easily. Then you will be told that how many bytes, how many records are there. You have to multiply number of bytes per record by the number of records. Then you will find the size of the file, but this size of the file is in computer's memory, RAM. Once you try to save this, you will see that the size of the file will be increased. How much it will be increased, it is variable and it cannot be predicted for you. So you will have to add that 10% to the file size, and then you will find the actual file size. You see, when you are basically telling the size of one single record, that one single record is one single record. This is not a file. So you will be telling the actual size. This 10% housekeeping will only be used when they ask you to find the file size. So if they're asking for a single record, you will tell the actual size. So single record is of 41 bytes. There are 150 records. And then after housekeeping, the size of the file on the disk here. Size of the file over the disk. Not in computer's memory. Okay. All right. So this concludes data types and related stuff. Let's see if we have missed anything. So data types, declarations, records, file size calculation, identifier table, and on the way we studied declaration, initialization, constructs, file sizing, and initializations, initial values, which is basically very necessary to be remembered. All numbers are initialized with 0. String and characters are initialized using null. Boolean is initialized using false. And date and times are basically not initialized. And if you will require them to be initialized for any reason, then for date it is current date, and for time it is current time. All right. So this concludes data type. Now I am going to start another feed for the next topic, which is string manipulation. This is the next topic that we have, string handling, string manipulation.